And with that Nostradamus reference, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the internet metaverse. I can't say that anymore, thanks to Facebook.
No.
Yeah, they kind of ruined it. That was my thing. In the internet microverse here on LinkedIn. Welcome to Work Done Live, where we discuss all aspects of the future of work. My name is Joe Rogers. My company is WorkDone, which is a corporate memory platform which operates at the intersection of knowledge management and process automation. We're here today with my cohort, Kirsten Campbell, the marketing tornado, who is an expert at all things digital and analog.
That's because I'm an old millennial. I know that's a dig. Okay, I know it.
That's basically everything. It's you're either, yeah. So and it's been rumored that she can actually read people's DNA. So Robert, you've been warned.
Okay.
Our guest today is Robert Menendez. Robert is has over 15 years of professional management experience on Wall Street, ranging from the trading floor and hedge fund management to running quantitative analysis teams in New York, San Francisco, and Houston. In addition to many capital investments, Robert co-founded the social network crowdcasting app Circus back in 2014, and he is now co-founder of Vest, which is known as the stock market of music, or the stock exchange of music, excuse me. Vest has created a global consumer rights marketplace that provides a mechanism for fans to participate in the governance of a music platform by purchasing utility governance tokens. And since 2017, Vest has grown from 0 users to 213,000 users in 2021. So, here we are. As always, we want to hear from you. So as the conversation proceeds, please don't hesitate to pop questions or comments into the chat, and we'll try our best to respond. With that said, Robert, welcome.
Thank you, Joe, for such an elegant introduction. And time does fly. You kind of forget sometimes, where you started and what you've done until you do a Zoom call and you're being interviewed and you realize that was like a lifetime ago. So thank you for having me.
Happy to jog your memory.
It's always your career read back to you like the court stenographer, isn't it?
It is, and it's so varied. I often wonder how I ended up here.
It is interesting. It is interesting. So, Kirsten, how are you today?
I'm always a delight. Always. How about yourself, Joe?
I hope to be a delight. We'll see. The jury's out. The jury's out. So it's kind of coincidental that today we're talking about decentralization. Originally, this episode was going to be entitled Enterprise Blockchain, but that actually doesn't capture everything that I wanted to discuss because it's such a sort of grand topic, and it's really foundational. Like, it's a shift, it's seismic in the impact that decentralization is having on our sort of society and on various industries and finance. So I figured, who better to talk about this than my favorite CFO, Rob Menendez, who has all this experience and from multiple perspectives. So with that, Robert, would you like to chime in? Anything you want to talk about in particular today?
Well, I just feel like it's a great time to be alive if you're in general looking at pillars of structure being not so much destroyed, but like eroded, new ways to achieve old goals, whether it's the music industry, film, being able to track goods and services, just a plethora of opportunities that are happening. And what's really exciting for me is watching young people, watching people that in a lot of cases you wouldn't consider to be participants of technology. Like venture capital, it's been great, for the creation of new technologies, but it's not necessarily inclusive, if you would. Like it's okay for me to go gamble. I can drink and gamble $5,000, $10,000, $100,000. No one asked me if I'm an accredited gambler, but if I hear of a company and I want to put money in it, it's kind of like a private club. Like you have to be accredited, you have to know somebody in the round. And I think that some of the most beautiful things that are happening within these new concepts and ideas, both for finance, music, film, the ability to lend on assets. Obviously everything within a blockchain ecosystem, but I think that that's going to start crossing over to real world assets, whether it's a house, a car. And it's just really exciting to see that the people that are participating and sharing in this opportunity are just regular, common humans, if you would, right? That find something exciting, feel that they can participate, that can buy into a token or get involved with the financing. And to me, that's the real interesting part of the decentralized portion, is that you can build, create, and pursue your dreams without necessarily, having to deal with a lot of issues.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I would almost say it was sort of similar to it fixing the model of like, if you were to go to the bank and ask for $200,000 to go to university, they would happily let you mortgage your future away. But if you showed up and asked for a small business loan for 50 grand, they would laugh you out of the bank. It's sort of similar to fixing those systems, but kind of in a different way. That's what I would hearken it to that.
1,000%. And I imagine showing up and telling someone, hey, I'm going to create a digital block that will attach itself to little digital art that you see for free in the internet. And I'm looking to raise $10 million around that. Not only, in my experience has been eyes just glossed over. I remember pitching people for our app and we were looking at doing with music, and it's just really nice to see like a revolution happening within the tech space in general, but just the opportunities in a broader sense that aren't attached to a central point, if you would, right? Like that's the really incredible thing, that you could have decentralized data storage, you could have decentralized apps, like just things that are in general used by everyone, but not owned by one entity.
That dovetails nicely into my first question here, which is blockchain governance revolves around protocol, application, and ecosystem. How should enterprise organizations cooperate to create open standards?
It's a really good question, because once you let the genie out of the hat, out of the box, so to speak, you can't put it back in. Governance is it's a serious issue because it can dictate what you're going to do, how you're going to build. And it's hard to listen to everyone because it's just kind of the reality of being humans. I think that the people that have the highest vested interest in a project could be of huge benefit to it. But it's a hard question to answer. I think future structures will definitely function in this way. What I've seen that has worked is where the founders of the concept and the idea slowly tiptoe into allowing more and more of a consensus, if you would, within the direction of the company and things of that nature, until they finally have a structure that is representative of what the like the DAO wants to do, so to speak. But it's a hard question because sometimes, like imagine if people got to vote on what Elon's doing at the very beginning, I don't think we'd have a Tesla. I don't think we'd have a SpaceX. Sometimes it's just the drive of the people behind the idea that get it to kind of to where it is. So it's a hard question to answer.
And it seems like these decisions by committee end up just watering down the incredible original vision. And there's not everybody who's doing blockchain is doing it in a 100% decentralized. Some of it's quite centralized, which is it's no longer decentralized.
Yeah. There's things I believe where they fit, like things that are of the public benefit, like voting, if you wanted to do voting, things of that nature, right? I understand that. Or decentralized social media platform where these are pieces that make sense, but then there's certain technologies that I don't know if that's necessarily a fit for it. So in some cases, yes, and in other cases, no. Will every single company have some portion of that? I don't think so.
Mhm.
I think blockchain is more of a team sport than people realize, especially at this moment, in the sense of they're going to go further if they have a common language and they're able to, it's like if you were to go on the internet, you needed a different browser for every different website because nobody could agree on what those tools and stuff were. That would have made the early days of the internet kind of brutal. And so do you think that something like that, like I know they're still competitors, but then that also opens up the question of competitive collaboration of, would it not make the most sense for people that are in this space playing around to kind of join up to at least figure out like, hey, we can all agree that a stop sign means stop, like those kind of things. Like, do you think that if people actually got together and had a little bit more, I guess, I don't want to say synergy because I hate that word, if they had a little bit more agreement on what those rules might be, do you think that that would actually allow blockchain to move forward quite significantly faster?
Well, I mean, definitely. I think, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, it's kind of like one ring to rule them all type of concept, like just, bridge protocols that allow you to take assets from different blockchains to another. I mean, that has to happen. I mean, you can't have everything occurring in one lane or 4 lanes. Like ultimately for this to function at scale, you're 1000% right. There has to be, if not rules for the road, ways to cross highways, right, back and forth seamlessly and effortlessly. And I think that's going to happen. I mean, I think without a doubt, there's a lot of phenomenal technologies being built around facilitating just that. So yeah, yes, I would agree.
Kind of interesting taking stock of the market or the industry now compared to 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, yeah.
Because I think a lot of those projects that raised money, that got funded, they're now up and running. Some of them are, a lot of them aren't, but they've created the notion of a decentralized exchange compared to a centralized exchange, which is what we're all accustomed to. Like that's brand new in existence,
And it's revolutionary because I know that if you take a look at the process of being able to get your wares out there or an ecosystem for your token, you had to get an exchange to agree to list you, right? And that didn't guarantee anything either. It didn't get, like, if people wanted to buy it, the exchange could be in Tokyo, it was difficult, right? But now you have a lot of ways to monetize within, your own, let's say you're staking for a node that needs to be worked on, and then you're creating rewards, and those rewards get paid out. They go in your wallet. There's liquidity within that token because the decentralized exchange now gives you an opportunity to trade and swap it out. That just wasn't possible. It's just so many things that have happened that are quite frankly incredible and revolutionary. I mean, the fact that you can participate in any of these concepts at any level that you want, whether it's 50 cents or $10 million, is revolutionary within itself. The fact you can bring liquidity to projects is incredible. I know of venture funds that only ask for token issuances. So, I mean, timeframes of 10 or plus years in private equity, if ever, like, you might be worth $20 million, but it's not liquid. Company hasn't been bought out. Like, just the opportunity to be front loaded to some degree in these ideas and concepts is phenomenal.
That's great.
I've got to play devil's avocado here. And
Yeah.
the part of like decentralization is not a magic bullet. And I know that like I'm with you in agreement on like, yeah, decentralization is the future and it's got more chances for everybody. However, with the double-edged sword of it is that with more freedom, there's also more freedom for other people to take away your freedom. And I'm thinking of the dude with his monkey NFTs. You probably read about that one, right? With the guy and his monkeys.
The Bored Apes?
Apes.
Yeah, the apes. So he had his 3 monkey NFTs taken away. And I actually wrote back in heist here as a note because I thought it was funny. Yesterday, he got one of his monkeys back. And so this is particularly interesting for me is that even though, or at least as a like marketing lay person, I would not consider myself a technologist by any stretch of the imagination. But what was interesting as I was reading about this, the monkeys, I was like, this is too funny. But as much as, even though everyone's talking about this like glorious decentralized world, what was interesting was how it still mimicked the properties of a centralized world, i.e. it was, I wrote this down here, he had 3 NFT marketplaces that actually announced that they were gonna ban the sale of it. That to me sounds like centralization. And so that's the part where I was like, what? Anyways, what are your thoughts on this as a Mr. Blockchain type person?
I mean, I think you got to take the good with the bad, right? And you're right. Freedom opens to freedom to theft and to a variety of different things, but no different than having in our collection someone breaking into your house. The fact that these dealers or marketplaces said, we're not going to accept stolen goods is only good for the community in general. Like you said, some rules that everybody has to agree on. But the underpinning behind that is that $1 billion art project was created by 2 guys, right? On digital photos, things that before had no value, kind of in the internet, people were creating, weren't being paid on. I think of like Basquiat. Like Basquiat, his artwork sells for a lot of money, but the Basquiat family doesn't participate in that. Like Sotheby's doesn't pay an ongoing commission. Somebody bought it, and then if that painting has value, great. And the artist may never benefit from that. So I think that risk is well worth it for the other side of that outcome, which is creators being able to actually participate on an ongoing basis with the things that they create, photographs, film, scripts, like just, it's really, it's just such a huge benefit for creators that I think that the other side of it, that freedom, that risk that someone, in some cases, it's lack of knowledge or understanding about the protocols that surround the assets. I know a lady that received a fake call saying that they were the crypto exchange where she was keeping her tokens and that they were there to verify some of the issues. Please give me your wallet information. She's older, and they took like $80,000 worth of Bitcoin. So it's always going to be bad actors, right? But once again, it's how do we come together to put these stop signs in place? It's the things you were talking about. Like these exchanges say, we know what APSOs are, right? They're verified on the blockchain. We're not going to sell any of them. So maybe the guy ends up in a position where, and everybody knows they're stolen, and where does he go with that?
Well, it's like stolen artwork. People will still buy stolen artwork and just keep it in a bunker. So,
but you can track it. Like the difference is because of the blockchain, you know it's in a wallet somewhere, right? Can't get it back, but it's there. And what's he going to do now? He can't sell them. And if he does sell them, that's the interesting thing. It's completely trackable.
Yeah.
Right.
And the FBI uses it frequently. So proud they use the blockchain against the guy.
Apparently, the guy got made fun of for contacting the FBI, and he was being like trolled on Twitter about it because they're like, "Oh, you went to the FBI because you were such an idiot. You gave him your password, and they like cleaned out your account." So he got mocked for that.
Yeah, they call it noob, like noob, a newbie.
Mm-hmm.
Idiot. Nonetheless, the note I had written here was that standards create a flywheel effect on usage and standardization, i.e. standardization incentivizes more investment funds. And then when you get more investment funds, you're funding cool shit. And then cool shit increases usage. And then usage provides more feedback for that sort of improvement loop of like how we're able to like consumerize crypto and blockchain. So it seems like all of these things kind of work together for each other's betterment.
I agree. And it's like that with all technologies. You build a car, build the roads, then the stop signs and the seat belts. But it all starts with like the creation and then what happens. And by consensus of humans wanting to regulate and make things safer, hopefully, you don't end up getting ripped off of your borders.
No one's going to steal my monkeys.
Yeah, don't take my monkeys.
It seems like, so, there was maybe more so a few years ago, but there was like this anarchist angle to blockchain where it couldn't be shut down unless you're China, and then you actually do shut it down. But it seems like things have flipped a little bit. And from my understanding is now regulation is more welcome because in order for this to go mainstream, it has to be regulated and there needs to be compliance. And And like, just recently the Bitcoin futures ETF, like the approval of that is like, that's momentous. I mean, what do you think would be next after that?
I mean, Ethereum. I mean, I think you're going to see a variety of different kind of like what I call crossovers to the real world, if you want to look at it that way, right? Or the old guard. And that will just inject more and more and more acceptance and understanding. If you look at Bitcoin originally, and people were like, well, that's for the dark web. What they don't understand is that it's not really about Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't really about replacing currency at this point. It's more like digital gold, if you want to look at it in that way. But it's what Bitcoin created and the possibility of expanding on that. You look at Ethereum, then Ethereum 2.0, the ability to embed code within the blockchain, create nodes that, I mean, things that generally would require staffs and teams of people stamping and approving things. You don't need that anymore. You could track goods, you could deliver assets by an agreement that is understood by all parties based on the contracts, which, I mean, the fact that it wasn't created earlier is actually what's really amazing to me. Right? It just eliminates so much waste. And, like, why do I have to call my bank? Or why am I even limited on how much I can move in and out of my bank? Like, it's your money, right? So why am I limited to, on my app, I can only send X amount? I have to go in the branch. Like, I get it. Someone might, hack you, whatever. I understand that. But if I go to a branch, I can't even get the cash out. If you go and you ask for 50 grand, they don't have 50 grand, right? It's your money. It's already digital. They're not keeping the cash. It's already X's and O's at JP Morgan Chase. So what's the difference between you having custody and someone else having custody, you being able to utilize your funds as you wish, versus someone else telling you what to do with those funds? The same thing for music, film, like that's, it just ripples into everything. I mean, think about what you're doing with Work Done, right? The ability to curate, track, and save a high bar of effort within a company, no matter what that job, that vertical might be. Someday you're going to retire, that person might leave. I mean, that's a digital asset in itself, right? What is the value of that times 100 to have, to not have that be a loss for the company at retirement age?
It really is. When we describe the corporate memory, retaining sort of their best practices, like perpetually forever, people are like, oh, that's not, everybody, it's one of these things like, how come blockchain didn't exist earlier? Well, how come nobody's done this earlier? That's always the reaction. And we're probably going to turn it into an NFT that can be sold or rented. So.
But wouldn't you prefer to do that if you need an accountant and there's like a score on that accountant and there's a cost, and then it could be staked, and for you as the creator, every time it's utilized, you're receiving a residual. I think AI and the changes that are coming, they're unstoppable. Whether it's a machine delivering something for you or building your house or whatever. And if we don't start to think about how as a community we're going to include everyone else, you might as well be able to own a piece of it, before a conglomerate creates it and you can't own any of it. So I think that's where the beauty of putting this on the blockchain and allowing a community to be around it and participate in it, I think that's the invaluable portion, versus having a private entity say, we're building this and we're offering this, and you could buy our stock if you want to. But that kind of skips the average guy, the average person, from having access to the product itself. So
true. So true.
So given that DeFi is on the rise, my question here is, with DeFi on the rise, governments and banks are scrambling to avoid losing control of the monetary system. I love imagining that, like actually pictures of that. What do you think will happen first in the evolution of banking? These archaic institutions will figure out how to stay in the game, or digital currency will hit widespread adoption among consumers?
I think they're not both mutually exclusive. If Wall Street is anything, it is definitely resilient. And whether it's computer programs, traders, they're buying music catalogs now. They're always looking for alpha. And I think you're starting to see that they're starting to be open to custody. They're starting to be open to structures. There's a lot of money to be made, and they see that opportunity, and I think they're going to embrace it. Because think about it, if any of these protocols are paying you 10%, like on USDT lending, how much are they making on the back end? Right, the banks get that, and if they can make it easy for their clients, I think it's a win-win in general, right? Even for both parties. Because if you're not crypto savvy, it's going to be really hard for you to figure some of these things out. Most of the technology isn't simple. Like, grandpa couldn't use it, but I think that's where the banks and these institutions could come in and be of help, if anything, right? And just custody the assets, if you would, like they do anything else. The real question is, like, are you comfortable with someone else holding it for you, or would you like? I think that's kind of like the thing. Will it be for everyone? Probably not.
But anybody that has a bank account is already comfortable with it.
But they don't realize that. That's my whole. That balance you're looking at, it's not real, right? It's on your debit card. It's just code going back and forth, telling that ATM give you money or subtract and add this. It's not like there's a massive pool of cash and someone's going in and moving the amounts in and out. So you're right.
Sure. I think the big shift in mindset is, oh, I'll call the 800 number and they'll look at my account and cancel that transaction or whatever. But and in crypto, that, well, if it's a centralized exchange, you actually could get that, but even they can only help so much. But if it's decentralized, I mean, it's on you.
It is on you. But if you look at the numbers, what this is saying is most people are okay with that. If you look at the rate of adoption, if you look at the rate of complex protocols being accepted and learned, I mean, here's an interesting narrative. I think token adoption and usage, 40% more minorities are into crypto, playing with crypto in the state of the populations, right? So think about communities that usually don't look at finance in the same way, whether it's African American, Hispanic, or what have you, really adopting and feeling a connection with this. And I think the reason why is because the barrier of entry is nil, right? You want to buy a token, there's a lot of ways you could buy a token. And before there wasn't even KYC, you could just get a wallet, so the adoption rate has been really, really phenomenal for disenfranchised communities. And I think if that carries suit, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have happen.
I mean, they're going to regulate it faster then.
You're probably right, but the cat's out of the bag already, right? Like, and also look at what that's done. I mean, hedge funds are large, but mutual funds are considerably larger, and that's because mutual funds are mom and pops. You have something that's for everybody. Like, you see, I mean, I hate to say it, but you look at these crazy tokens, and that's all socially driven, right? There's no hedge fund manager buying into, Doge back in the day. I mean, these were really things that were driven by young guys looking at memes and telling other people to buy, and whether you call it collusion or whatever you want to call it, it shows the incredible power of the unified thought process into a product without a barrier, right?
Also, the lack of generational wealth, I think, is like, to your point, it's the lack, there isn't the barrier to entry of like a giant bag, a burlap sack of money with a dollar sign on it. Because usually it's always generational wealth, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. So it makes sense that everybody else is flocking to this, because it's like, oh, finally, we can actually climb up the ladder, because normally it's been greased and is like 50 feet up.
Yeah, I mean, think about just in finance, you have to have a minimum of 10,000 to be able to buy stock. This is, a lifetime ago. There were all of these like little barriers to have you play any of the games. There's just so many things happening now. I mean, it's really quite amazing. The ultimate question is, at some point, how saturated does it get? And there's going to be losers, like with everything else, right? Like, not every single concept and idea is going to last, and what are going to be the ramifications of that? But you saw that in tech. Like, we got Apple, Google, a bunch of amazing companies. Amazon came out of the first kind of tech bubble, and I think crypto is going to be very similar.
Do you think that the current trend of everybody, I mean, it's so easy to issue your own token now. Is that going to stay the case, or will there be a shakeout and it'll just narrow down to a few?
Well, I think there'll be I mean, like all waves of exuberance, all waves have to crash. It's human nature. It's just what happens, you know. Will Bitcoin be around, Ethereum, and a lot of these other things? Of course. And I mean, you can kind of tell when you look at the playing field, people that are really building ecosystems that are of value versus, you know, you could call it gimmicks, but that's life in general, right? People go to Vegas, play cards or whatever. I don't think this is incredibly different because the stock market is equally as painful, I would say. And most people don't make money in the market. They you know, it's an interesting thing. A guy once told me, he's like, you know, there's so many signals of opportunity, but people psychologically feel like the ship is left, right? So take for example, Starbucks, you know, for how many Starbucks did you see open over how long of a time period while that stock climbed? Tesla, Apple, from the first iPhone to now, if you do the math on just having bought then and look at all the iterations, but a lot of people just didn't. They feel like, oh, that move's already happened. That move's already happened, right? So we're not really psychologically, we're not psychologically built for trading. And having run and been involved in trading, there's more professional athletes than there were professional traders. I think the failure rate was upward of 95, 98%. Like people just, you know, it's really, really hard to buy when everyone else is selling and sell when everyone else is buying. That psychology is really, really difficult. So,
as somebody who loves consumer behavior, because it was my specialty, I can attest that humans are totally irrational. The only thing we could ever hope for is to be predictably irrational. But yeah, humans,
right.
We are so weird about like, I'll sell now. Like all the behavioral psychology of it is just brutal. But yeah, I agree completely. Like we're not the best judge. We might as well just get Mr. Gox, the hamster. He's better at it because he doesn't have the emotion. He's not
zero
connected.
Yeah, he's not even connected to that. And if you think about consumerism, I mean, think of like what people are willing to pay based on a brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you go, this is the first one's free. It devalues the entire line, right? So people want to be psychologically messed with, I guess. I mean, like, what's the difference between that phone and that other phone? They both make calls. They both have text messages, whatever it might be. But the psychology behind this exuberant, limited consumerism, as you see it in the NFTs. Look at Supreme. Supreme was a clothing line, $3 billion, what it sold for. And all they did was curate limited drops. And the psychology behind, I got to have that. I got to have it at that price. I mean, it's incredible. It's a ton of money. I mean, Bored Apes. It's all, you know, it's an incredible run.
Okay, I've got a marketing question here for you. It's long. According to Seth Godin, a luxury good is one where the price paid is much higher than the apparent utility it offers. We pay extra precisely because it's not good value. The utility lies in how we and our peers think about it. The scarcity and bling of a luxury good is used to increase our status in our own eyes and those in our cohort. Blockchain has a clear purpose. This is me. This is not. Seth Godin does not talk about blockchain in this. This is me. Blockchain has a clear purpose in the future of work, but given this context, do you think NFTs will be a fad due to their status as a luxury good?
I think all luxury goods have a cycle. We've seen that with luxury brands, you know, they go in and out of favor all the time. So I think that some will not stand the test of time. That's just to be expected. And also, you know, tastes change with time. That doesn't mean that 20 years from now, the Bored Ape isn't going to be even more valuable because so many people were dismissive of it during its, you know, its trough, if it ever has a trough. But you see these things in cycles, and I mean, specifically like with fashion, watches, clothing in general, that changes dramatically, as you know. Rollerblades is probably a really good example. People were rollerblading everywhere, and then like it became not a cool thing to do anymore. I don't even know how it started, but it just wasn't cool. And because it wasn't cool, not that the rollerblades weren't working, not that they were hurting people, nothing. Just someone said something on TV or online that made them not cool anymore. And then that was over.
Is it possible to have a decentralized brand?
I mean, anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about doing it? I mean, I think, Supreme to some degree was a decentralized brand because they would invite creators to collaborate on an ongoing basis, and every collaboration was valuable, you know.
Mhm.
And the guy that started that, it was in New York, had a skate shop. And what he realized is that a bunch of skaters were showing up wearing street gear and like Louis Vuitton, street gear and like Gucci. And he was like, there's a market here that's completely untapped. And who would have thought, right? Like if you look at the lines around these drops, whether it's Bored Ape, Supreme, Billionaire Boys Club, there's a lot of these brands that, you know, all of a sudden found a lot of inspiration from streetwear. And that's just regular kids. I mean, that's a kid buying a $300 whatever, $500 whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So it's sort of, its essence is already decentralized. It's just whether or not you're paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, they're buying digital sneakers. Like, I mean, there's sneaker drops where it's just an icon that's spinning and you're spending $500, $300, $1,000, right? So it's, I think this is playing into the metaverse. I think this is playing. Now, once you have it, what do you want to do with it? And if you see the things that are happening and moving, it's a timeline that makes sense, right? Like you're like, people are buying $1 million for a punk, right? What are you going to do with that punk? You're going to just keep it on your phone? You're going to go in the metaverse. You're going to have a space now. You're going to plaster it. You're going to have the meetings there. You're going to, no one is buying these things to not show them off. It's clear. I mean, it's a vanity play, like she stated, right? This is what I have. Check it out, and you got to have some place to check it out. Now comes the metaverse.
Fun. If you can't brag to everybody about it, what's the point?
Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like, what is the point of having 5 Bored Apes if nobody can see them?
Yeah, the whole point of having a luxury car is so that everybody sees me driving around in a luxury car. Like it's keeping it a secret isn't the point of it. But then there's different levels of like, that's why you buy a Koenigsegg versus an Aston Martin. Like, yeah, they're all really expensive and glamorous cars, but they're all saying something different about your self-image and how you want people to perceive you. So like, you can still have all those things. And that's what's kind of cool about the NFT space right now, is it's still that kind of like Wild West, and there's no like Gucci yet or like BMW or stuff in that sense.
Yeah, and it's actually cooler, if you would, within that community to not be that, right? And I think it's like akin to fashion. I think it's a way to be an individual in a place that's full. I mean, like there's, if you go to Japan and there's like a little neighborhood and it's just kids dressed up, like you name it, they've all got a different look. And it's because it's such a massive city, 20 million people. People are looking to be individuals. By any means necessary, I just want to stand out. And I think online that happens also. Like, I don't want to be Rob 1205. Like, I want to have an icon. I want to be different. I want people to be able to recognize me within that. And I think that the NFTs and all of these projects play really well into that. And I think we're going to see more of it. I think it's just the beginning of Ready Player One or Snow Crash, which was like an interesting novel where this kid was living in a trunk in LA, like in this little cubicle, but in the metaverse, he, was one of the richest guys in there, owned space, and just, I think there's going to be these really interesting separate worlds that are happening where kids have a bunch of digital assets and maybe not a lot in the real world.
How does it work? Like a project, I know the Decentraland, I think, is one where they're basically creating a digital twin of every piece of real estate on the planet, or maybe at least Manhattan and Paris or whatever.
Yeah, it works like the real world. I own that land. You want to build something on it. You want to advertise on it. You got to pay me. You're going to pay me in the native token. Like Dubai, to have any business, Dubai is Decentraland, right? Like Dubai, you got to have someone who is from the UAE basically sign off on your business, whatever you're doing. And that usually involves, they're going to get a percentage of that flow. Same thing. I own that block in New York. You want to build something, you want to put your ad up because I'm getting traffic that's walking through in the metaverse, then you're gonna have to pay me.
Now, what if, but there's multiple digital worlds, like there's multiple projects to do the same thing. Will they ever be interconnected, or would they have to stay separate? Because then,
I mean, who knows? I mean, that's the interesting thing. And to what level, who provides what? There's a video game called Star Atlas, where the graphics are like incredible, and it's got its own token economics, and you can build out and all of these different things, like to a whole other level. I mean, you know, I like video games, but I'm not the type of, I mean, you know me, Joe, I'm a going outside and having fun kind of guy. So what happens when a video game starts paying you, right? Like, I'm thinking more along the lines like, what's my son? Is my son going to be playing Star Atlas all day as a job, as a, you know, what happens to his ability to function in the real world with other people versus avatars? I mean, there's a lot of social things that come about from that, right? Whatever that might be.
yeah, it's interesting. It's happening pretty quickly too.
Well, the promise of it has been around forever. The fact that people are actually gravitating to it, that's new. And that money, like a lot of money is being thrown at it, that's also new. But this idea of inhabiting, you know, Sims, you remember Sims, right? It's that, but on steroids, obviously.
Second Life.
Yeah. I can't even get my first one right. They already want me to have a second one? What's going on here?
This is your do-over. You should be grateful. Although we do have to point out the dystopian hilarity of, or rather macabre, but the dystopian hilarity of the richest guys on earth who have the ability to buy anything are the ones that are the most unsatisfied and are the ones that are wanting to go into the little sim Black Mirror virtual world. Can we all just have a second to laugh at that? Like, come on.
Well, I think it's kind of like not knowing it's a blessing, because if you're on the grind and in your mind, you're like, you know, if I just had that house, if I had that car, I'd be happy. So you're, you know, hanging on to that. But once you have all of that and you're still miserable, well, where do you go from there? It's like you've achieved everything and you're still the same shitty, unhappy person. That's a whole other thing, right? Like that's a whole other level of issues, like you said, and you might pursue trying to find some other version of yourself. I don't know, but money can make you comfortable. I don't know if it can make you a better person or happy. It depends.
It just amplifies all your worst characteristics. It really, really does. So.
Yeah, you're like, believe me, I know.
No, it's worse. Like, if we haven't already known that Zuckerberg needs, like, you know, a stable of therapists, because clearly dude's got some issues. So if we didn't already know that, I feel like he might as well have just taken a megaphone and announced it to the world with his whole Megaverse bullshit. That's a whole thing.
Well, humans were complex. Like this whole idea in society in general that it's all shades of gray. You know, the heroes have faults, the villains have virtues. It's never as simple as you think it is, right? So the complexities of someone who views life through the prism of their own existence, however that might have been for Zuckerberg, is a difficult, you know, how he perceives things is going to be completely different. In his mind, it might be okay to socially manipulate different angles. I mean, think of a machine built for marketing, like built to really get you to look at an ad and buy something. Now pointed at you for political purposes, right? It's the same brain, different product, but it's still going to manipulate and do that. And it's a hard, like, you know, where's that line? Where's, you know, we all bought in. Right. I mean, we all freely gave our photos and our info. I mean, like I barely know anyone who's even off of it. So we complain, but you know, everybody, you're off of it? Wow, okay.
I've not been on Facebook in years. I love telling people that. It's wonderful. It allows me to be quite fun.
Are you on Instagram?
Yes, I'm a voyeur on Instagram. I don't actually post.
But he's still, you know, what
you're following,
what you're
the web. Yes.
He got you. But that's the thing. Like, could Instagram exist in a tokenized ecosystem? For sure. I think the real interesting thing is like, what is the value of who you are and why aren't you receiving that? For the first time in history, data became more valuable than oil. And in what way or capacity is anyone participating in that? Zero. But if you had a platform that's really like built in an ecosystem of sharing, like I see a photo that you have and I want to use it, maybe it's a micro slice of my token, whatever, like, already embedded, a way to share and create together that is validated by each other and not validated by a third party who's pushing you to like something or not like something or whatever that might be. And I think it's a matter of time with the money that's being thrown around for something like that to come. I think it's incredibly smart of Facebook to go into this metaverse because they've got the resource to create a product. I'm not saying that however you look at him in general, but to be able to deliver a product that works and at a high level does what it's supposed to do. I mean, I think they've only been down once in its entire history. So they're going to deliver something where everyone's going to run in with their NFTs and start, putting up their second life. I think he'll be able to do that. Do we bite is a whole other question. Is people my age, not so much. It's the younger generation where they look at that and be like, screw you. Or will he do such a good job that just can't help to go in there, tool around?
After looking at that horrible like team meeting thing that he had, and it was this like awful, like uncanny valley. Based on that alone, I was like, oh dude, you are many years from getting this to being anything like even sellable. Because that thing was comical. Like, oh my God, it was like this janky little like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was so brutal. Based on that, I think we're safe.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, he's going to build something that works, but because the nice thing about crypto in general is that it's all community driven. Whether it's I like this token or I like this project, these things work because people get together and agree to support it.
Mm-hmm.
Like work done, Joe.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It's interesting. Like 2 phones ago, Verizon said, oh, you can get an Oculus for $49 after Facebook bought them. So I got it because I was curious. And it was, okay, I can watch Netflix on my headgear here, but it's heavy, it's unwieldy, it's not comfortable. So it went, it was a toy for a couple weeks and then I never really touched it again. But I recall they did something where it was like, oh, you can actually be in a room with your Facebook friends if they're also, properly suited up. And I did that once and it was like, holy smoke. Okay, now I get why they did this. That experience, and obviously it was very crude, but it was like, wow, this is the early days of something that's, when it turns into glasses like these, that are project, and you don't even know necessarily, they should have a blinking light or something, but and you'll be, in this case, augmented reality, living in two environments at once. And if that's, in Decentraland instead of Meta, I mean, which it will be, that's it's like the idea of you're creating your own avatar in this virtual reality and being whoever you want to be. That's just a huge step for a lot of people.
But it's coming. And, I think if you look just in general at the scope of are we living in a generated reality or not? And the odds are 50-50, right? Which says a lot. But, despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. Would it matter? It still wouldn't change anything, whether we were code or real or what have you. And if you go from Pong to where video games and movies are now, it is a definite reality that these metaverses will look, feel to some degree. I mean, think about it, you'll be able to have chip implants. I mean, Elon's working on that, but a lot of people are working on technologies that will integrate humans with all types of, how are you going to know the difference? It's going to go from a goggle to, I hate to say it, Black Mirror, were they playing that video game? What's the difference? I mean, who knows? Yeah, but who knows? These are really deep avenues of thoughts of where technology will lead us. And is it all great for humanity? I don't know, but
and the control, there's always going to be the metas, the centralized control structures. And then there will be the Wild West where everybody's just kind of doing their thing and you interact. I think that, you know, I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, I think the blockchain part of it is, do you want that to be owned by one entity or do you want to own this? And I think that's really the seismic difference about where things are going in tech, which are very different from where things were going in tech when I was young. Like, you know, like Facebook was doing what Facebook was doing. There's no way to participate in that or be a part of that, right? Unless you work there or you own the stock later on. But here, you could be a part of the DAO. You could be a part of, I mean, you could really be a part of a structure that is not a pillar that excludes you, if that makes sense, you know?
Sure. So before I ask this question, I should probably say this is not financial advice. Don't act on anything that's discussed here.
That's discussed or said, yeah.
So we're in a bull run in the crypto market. How long is that going to go, do you think, based on experience?
I mean, it's going to have a cycle. It's the same thing. And if you look even at the history of Bitcoin with their halvings, I mean, like it's almost the same chart again and again and again. There's stuff that's just not going to make it, right? I mean, like I think Ethereum, it's looking like they're going to be able to switch to the second version, which goes to proof of stake and less on the mining, which is, you know, bad for the miners, but good overall, I think, for Ether and what it's attempting to do. It's good for the planet, but also it's good. I mean, they're burning. So, you know, before there was an endless supply. So I think you're going to see, in my mind, at some point, a flip between Bitcoin and Ethereum is not only possible, but very probable. There's a lot of really well-run tech teams that I think are going to do incredible work. You know, it's hard to tell. The question is like, you know, where do you? It's funny because for crypto people, being up 80% in a year is like, that's bullshit, right? To finance guys, you're like, Jesus Christ, you know, like 10% a year. I mean, think about like what is a great hedge fund? If you could do 10 to 12% a year, you were like an incredible manager. I mean, you can do that staking USDT now.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a big question. The opportunities are endless, but they have to come down.
So you mentioned staking. Will obviously that yield, that rate will go up and down, fluctuate with the market. I mean, and part of this is my own limited or expanding understanding. Like Gemini, you can convert to the Gemini dollar and earn 8%, super low risk. You're not even lending it out. Oh, well, I guess you're.
Well, they are.
They are.
They are in some way, yeah.
Right. Or you can lend your stuff out and it goes up. And then it's based on, you know, okay, are there reserves in place? And you could start to get a little, open yourself up to more risk by going to an exchange that,
it's leverage. I mean, it's leverage. And it's something that Wall Street has done incredibly well forever and made a lot of money doing it. The only difference is that now you're participating in it, right? Like you're a part of, I mean, is the bank really lending money at 0.02? No, right? That's what they're giving you on the money that you're keeping there that then they're using for a variety of different things. This is just an open marketplace. And if you look at a lot of these lending protocols that are active, when tokens are running a lot and running up, you'll see that the amount that they're willing to pay on 7, 14 days or 27-day USDT lending, it goes up. It can go up as high as 50%, come back down to 20 or 30. So it's really based on what the market will bear. And then internally, you got to make sure that the controls, that the platforms that you're using are real, that they're there, that some of that profit is going back into like an account for a rainy day when maybe things screw up. But I think we've had some really bad swings, and a lot of these protocols have managed to survive and hold tight.
Yeah.
and it's still better. I mean, even if you're getting 4%, it's way better than a bank, right? That's the crazy thing. Even at its worst arch, it's a pretty good return.
So is that a death knell for savings accounts in general?
I mean, why would you keep any? We're in a K recovery. Like it's you got to own assets or put your money to work. Otherwise, the value of the dollar is down by 20% over the last 10 years.
That's interesting. I
mean,
I was not aware of that.
Great news.
That hurts.
But or I mean, it's a significant number. I mean, I think that's the last thing that I read, or maybe 10 or 20 years. But either way, it's a depreciating. I mean, it's inflation, right? It's what happens over time. And you could buy a Coke for 25 cents and 50, 75 cents. It's there. And if you were to just save that quarter, well, it's not getting you that Coke can anymore, right?
Right.
You have to find ways to get either physical assets, which is real estate, or even look at the price of cars. For a while, used cars were skyrocketing. I think it's really gonna hurt the 9-to-5 guy, the guy that has money, comes in, is paying the bills, and doesn't have enough to do anything more, because the value of his dollars is gonna evaporate. And if he doesn't have the knowledge to get involved with anything else, it's gonna be pretty difficult.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's well, and I think in LA, they're taking applications for universal basic income, and through Sunday or through Monday. So it's not too late to run down to the office. $1,000 a month for 12 months.
I would take it. I mean, what are you going to do with automation? I think the people that fight against that it's comical to me, because it's going to be a necessity unless you want looting or whatever, right? As technology grows and more jobs, lawyers, accountant, I mean, like, it's not the delivery guy only, right? What happens when cars drive themselves? What happens to that Uber driver?
Huge. Yeah, trucks,
right?
taxis.
Trucks, yeah.
But we also can't ignore the lack of velocity of money, considering the wealth concentration, especially in America, that the wealth concentration alone is worse than Marie Antoinette. Like, this is worse than the French Revolution. And so, not surprisingly, because when rich people get money, it just goes into their offshore accounts. Whereas when everybody else gets money, it gets distributed out into the economy. And that creates more jobs, more everything, aka velocity of money. You don't need to hear from me. And so there's also that part of it. Yes, of course, like automation, like all those other things are absolutely a factor with technology and all that stuff. But we're also forgetting the core part of our civilization and society, and that a lot of people are basically have been kicked off the curb, and that's kind of it. So we also not just tech. Yeah,
no, I mean, that's true. Like in automation will only accelerate that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, like if there's a robot giving me a burger, right? How much of the fee of any of that is going back into society? Is there a tax? Like, I think not Warren Buffett, but the founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates, was saying that automation should be taxed accordingly, and that money could go into universal income, just for the sheer fact. And here's the thing, though, it's not necessarily bad news if it's done right, because there's a lot of emotional and societal needs that we have as a society and as a race, where a lot of people could benefit by being involved, whether it's beautification of lands, planting trees, helping the elderly, whatever it might be. There's a lot of things that we can do that don't necessarily have to equal a 9-to-5 grind. And I think psychologically, well, it's creating art. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot of hippie mumbo jumbo, but this is the reality of where we're going, and we have to start valuing different aspects of what we offer as humans. Because I know in America, if you're working 2 jobs and you're poor, you're lazy, which is a crazy concept, because the poor are always constantly working. And it's been found that psychologically, poverty makes you make bad decisions, because you get a parking ticket. Do you pay the light bill, or do you let that turn into a ticket, and then you're arrested, and then your car is like, it's a domino effect of just bad luck that is created by your financial situation.
It's very hard to be poor.
Yeah. Well, it's villainized as well, or like healthcare. I mean, like you guys in Canada, you have universal health care, and for all of its faults, at least it's there. But I find it funny that when I talk to people that are my friends, they don't see that as a basic human right, and they don't care until they lose their job or something happens and they're on that other side, or they got really sick and it's a $200,000 bill. But until then, everyone is like lazy. Like,
most people are 3 bad decisions away from being homeless. No one out of the 99%, nobody is 3 good months away from being a millionaire. And yet they're all the bootlickers that are like, don't tax Elon Musk. And you're like, what are you saying? You're not going to be rich.
But I think it's because the same reason why America is successful, if you want to look at it as an idea creator or whatever, like, if you take a look at what gets built here, it's because of that same attitude is why we're so good. And that same attitude is also why we're so bad, because we're risk takers. We're like an entire country built on people that immigrated from other places. When most of them stayed, a lot of, like it's the type A risk takers that came here. And that mindset is still embedded. So it's really hard, I think, to look at a level playing field and think differently. And it's a benefit and a very big negative at the same time. Because the idea is like, I'm going to be a millionaire. I wouldn't want to get taxed, even though
you're a waitress somewhere and you're like, you're making $20,000 a year.
Right. But it's that part that is, the cross between reality and.
But that's American. That's American propaganda that you guys have done a spectacular job on over the past 50 years, but also that the morality tied to work is actually Calvinism. That came over on the boat with you guys when you showed up and washed ashore in America. It's based in Calvinism. And that's the insidious, gross part of the religion is so ingrained in your guys' systems because of Calvinism. You guys want to get that out? You're going to have to get rid of that.
I mean, the problem is that we're living in a variety of Americas, right? So you have the coastal cities, the East Coast, Middle America, all with their own individual perception of what's right, who belongs here, who doesn't belong here. And it's, it's not perfect, but having traveled the world, I will say, as imperfect as it is, I haven't really found anything compatible. Maybe Singapore is like the closest thing that I've seen in Asia, because it's very homogenized all over the world. So it's a shit show, but hopefully we can figure it out. I don't know. Well, hopefully you'll stay our neighbor. Who knows?
We're gonna have to build a wall.
Who knows what'll happen? But I have to believe, like, in the resilience and the opportunity as human beings in general, that we can start to see past these singular myopic, like, either you're a loser or you're a winner based on just what you have in your pocket. Because we end up valuing art so much in our clothes and the design in cars, like just in a variety of different things. But yet people that are creative in nature are looked down upon if they're not. I think there has to be like a seismic change in society. I think crypto and blockchain is actually becoming a really big part of that.
I think decentralization is going to like blow away. Well, national borders will always be there, but I think they won't define culture. It's going to be proximity, like in the virtual. There's not going to be any national borders in the
metaverse.
In the metaverse, thank you. And
you're not even going to know where that person is. That really attractive lady you've been talking to, Joe, in the metaverse is. Yeah.
No, I saw that
Pablo Antonio in Mexico City, weighing 250 pounds in his mom's apartment.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that it's there's no shortage of potential outcomes like in that direction, but I think people will. It's sort of like affinity groups on the internet. People find each other and create these networks. It's going to happen. And I think it's something new. I mean, it has to evolve. It just has to, because
I agree.
I'm a bit of a socialist, even though I'm very much a capitalist, but we're definitely, there's winners and losers. or so there are some who think that they believe if there's going to be winners, then there have to be losers. There are people that operate that way. And I disagree with that. I think there can be winners and the losers can have a soft landing, or that safety net.
And I think the definition is also a hard thing to look at because it's not, and it's not a binary outcome, like people that work hard and maybe aren't afforded to make more money. There's a lot to be said for humanity in general. I deeply believe that there's some safety nets that should be standard in society, whether it's healthcare or the ability to get a loan for ideas and concepts and, a variety of different things. But I do believe that opportunity and reward systems should exist, obviously, based on effort that's put in. But I think the way that we look at people kind of needs to change to some degree. Someone that's working 3 jobs isn't stupid. They're not a loser per se, right? Like, or the guy that's made a ton of money may not necessarily, because one thing you realize when you're swimming around in the business space, sometimes the people that do extremely well are not the best people.
Right. Or they're dumb. They're often really, really dumb. And you're like, how did you get here? You haven't even discovered fire. Like, what? Yeah, that's mostly what it is.
Well, it's a mix of things, and it's tribal in some cases, and who let you in the door and things of that nature. And I think that's also what makes this new horizon of blockchain so admirable. I mean, I was reading about this video game, forgot the name of it, where you're competing with NFTs, and there's people making that. I mean, if you think about it, $2,000 to $3,000 a month, it's not a lot for America, but there's an entire, like in India and a lot of other places, like in Latin America, where there's people that are just playing this game full time and making money with, like I think that kind of liberty and freedom of opportunity that crypto projects bring is really phenomenal and revolutionary. I'm excited to see more of it. I mean,
Wow. Well,
I'm trying to leave on a good note.
Yeah.
It got kind of dark there for a minute, right?
That is a good note. I read an article about a guy in the Philippines who lost his job, and he started
playing that game.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I'm making way more than I did at my job." It's like, that's so cool. I think there's going to be a huge, there's going to be the old world and the new world, and there's going to be a fissure that grows. And it's just going to be a generation, I think, of strife. Maybe we're in it already. I think so. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you, Robert, for coming.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And Kirsten, as always, you're a delight.
Always. We didn't even get through all of our questions, and I promised Robert we'd be done at 6. So my apologies, Robert. We're 7 minutes.
It's okay. I really enjoyed. Everything. So I'm a happy camper. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're not late for dinner.
Okay, good. What's on the menu? What are you having?
Whatever restaurant is open. I'm not a cooker. I'm really good. As Joe will tell you, I'm really good at making reservations.
You're an eater, not a maker.
Yeah. Because of my background, like being in finance, trading, and all those different things, I wasn't married, and you just didn't. You wanted to be social, so you'd go out to dinner most of the time just to be around people and have a conversation. And it's nothing worse than like microwave meal and a TV show.
Yeah. That's why you got to learn to cook so that you can eat delicious stuff at home.
But then I don't get the interaction.
But then he's by himself.
I don't get to watch the show. Like, it's not about even going out to eat with other people all the time, but I just like being, my glass of wine, some good food, and just seeing the ebb and flow.
It's all about the solo dining experience. That when you can go over into the solo dining experience, your entire world just opens up. It's glorious. I can't even tell you.
I have to agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that. I don't know why. They feel really weird about it. I don't even.
Doesn't bother me at all. Yeah.
I tell people all the time, and they're like, "How do you do that? Oh my God, don't you feel uncomfortable?" I'm like, "No, like nobody gives a shit. They're worried about."
But they do. In their mind, they're like, "Do they think I'm alone? Do they think my date didn't show up?" Like I'm just there. Like, is this a really good bottle of wine? What are you having? And I just enjoy watching people, and it's like a moment to myself, which I enjoy.
It's a vacation.
It is.
That's right. Well, thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, Kirsten, as always. And let's see, I think in 2 weeks, we'll be back with a session on politics. Is that correct, Kirsten?
Yep, voting. It's all about voting in the future of work. But in the meantime, if you guys need asylum in Canada, let me know. I'll try to sneak you in.
I got like 2 thumbs up. Yeah. What's in your duffel bag?
I'll come
Mid-sized Latino.
down to the Bellingham border, get in the pink bug, and I'll speed you guys across the border. I got Nexus, so they'll never know it was me. Yeah, they'll totally know it was me.
There'll be like a leg sticking out the back. They'll be like, "What is that? Is that your pet?" I'm her comfort pet. For stress.
Fantastic. All right. So you guys can hang out, and I'll wrap it up. Thank you all out there, and we'll see you next time on Work Done Live. Take care.